Celtica. Celtica is a game that I picked up at my friendly local game store. They have a section for second-hand games at fairly low prices. I saw Celtica, I didn't know anything about the game. I looked for some information online and it wasn't particularly encouraging. The rating on Board Game Geek is low. The comments were pretty damning. And yet, I said, I don't know, it looked neat. I mean, the components look nice. The price was pretty low, so I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. Worst come to worst, I will use the map, that as you will see is pretty attractive, as the strategic map for fantasy wargaming or adventuring. Well, I'm glad actually that I decided to ignore Board Game Geek for once. The Oracle isn't always right, because I can already tell this is a game that I enjoy quite a bit. It's very light, very simple, might be too light and simple for many hobby gamers out there, but I played it with my daughter Amelia, who is 7. We had a good time. I played it with some guests that are visiting for Thanksgiving, and they're not usual regular players. And they had a good time. So I'm glad that I have the game. Now I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the game and how it works, and then I'll give you more detail about my reactions and impressions of the game. Now, the game is played on this board here. The players are trying to collect pieces of amulets and to form full, complete amulets. There are these tiles here that are used to form the amulets. As you can see, they are made of different colors. They have different colors. They have different designs. It takes 9 different pieces to form a complete amulet. My copy came with photocopies of the rulebook to show the diagram of each amulet. You need to have that combination of tiles to have a complete amulet. I guess someone else also realized that it's good to give one of these to each player, especially at the beginning. And so when you have an amulet, good for you. Because at the end of the game, the player with the most completed amulets in their play area will win the game. If there is a tie there, then the largest incomplete amulet wins the game. So to collect the pieces that you will use to form your amulets, you recruit druids. These druids will move along this track of spaces, moving towards the goal, which is the area there. And they will perform several actions, and especially they will collect the pieces of amulets for you. Very important, the English translation of the rules has omitted that the druids can only move forward, can only move in the direction of the goal, never backwards, because, as you will see when I explain the rules more in detail, if they could do that, that would make no sense. The design would be completely pointless. So that's a pretty big omission from the English rules. I read them. It seems strange to me that the druids could move in either direction, and I checked online and that was confirmed. So you will recruit the help of these druids. Yes, you do not play the role of a single specific druid. You activate different druids. There is this deck of cards here that represent the various druids you have in the game. They are marked by the color on the frame and the background. We have the brown, the white, the red druid, the black druid, and the gray druid. Sometimes at the beginning people mix them up a little bit. They're not colors that are all that different from one another. Also, again, when you look at the game pieces, they look a little more drab than you have in fantasy. Many fantasy games these days. But then, hey, meeples this big that look to me not so much like druids but like monks, those are cool game pieces, so I'm happy with those. And again, the board, if nothing else, you can definitely use it for a role-playing game or for fantasy wargaming. Now, each player at the beginning of a round receives a hand of 5 cards from that deck. Then when it is your turn, you will play a number of these cards. They have to be all of the same color, and you will move the corresponding druid by the number of spaces. For example, I could play this card here and move white druid by 1 space, or I could play these 2 cards as a set, and then I would move white druid by 2 spaces. Then you interact with the spaces the druid land in. You ignore the intermediate places, the places that the druid move through. So you play the cards, move the druid, interact with the area. We'll see how you do that. And then the next player goes, and maybe the next player moves this one, and the following player moves this one. Then he's back to you again, or another player does that, and so on and so forth. So the druids will move around the board like this. Depending on the space in which you land, you can do different types of things. If the druid that you just moved enters and ends movement in this area, then you draw another druid card. As you can see, the symbol makes it easier to see what these symbols are for. So you simply get a new card that goes in your hand, and you have to play it next turn. If you end in a space that has that symbol there, you collect a number of pieces of amulets equal to the number of those symbols. So here you collect one piece of amulet. Later you get places where you get to collect 2 or 3 here, later even 4, and in the goal even 5. Speaking of the goal, when a druid lands in the goal, that triggers the end of the game. The players keep playing as normal until their hands are depleted, that is, the round is over, and at that point you score points, and if you score amulets, see who has the most completed amulets. But before we get there, there's a long journey that we have to go through. When you collect pieces of amulets, you take them from the display here. Suppose I want this piece of amulet here, and immediately replace it from another one from the pool. And then you place that amulet in either piece of amulet in your play area, because you want to try to create a nice composition there. For example, this one goes here, then the rose goes here, and later, say, quite the orange goes here. I'm looking at the diagram. Yes, I haven't memorized it yet. So as the game progresses, an incomplete amulet may look like something like this. If I get multiple copies of the same amulet, that's okay. I just start a new one. I add them to another one. You can have multiple incomplete amulets going on at the same time. But what happens if you end in one of these flaming spaces? These are ruins areas that the Vikings, they're not always flaming, some are a little more subdued, but if you see the Viking symbol there, these are areas that the Vikings are raiding, and you are stepping right into those. When you end movement with your druid in an area that has that symbol, you lose a number of pieces of amulets equal to the number of amulet symbols in that area. If the druid I just moved lands here, boom, I lose an amulet. You lose them from your personal area, and you may have even to lose pieces from completed amulets. So it is good to have a bunch of extra pieces of amulet just to give to the Vikings if you have to end movement in that area, but it's even better if you manage to simply rush through them, didn't catch me, kind of thing. If you can move your druid through there without stopping. And since, however, you have to play all of your cards until your hand is over, sometimes until your hand is empty, sometimes you will be forced to stop where there are the Vikings. At least consolation prize when you get a Viking. When you stop in a Viking area and lose some piece of amulet, you also get a card from the Viking deck. The experience gives you, I don't know, a little more understanding of what's going on. Basically, you draw a card from this deck as a consolation prize, and they work exactly like other druid cards. It is just that they enhance other cards. So I could, if I have these two in my hand, add them to another black druid, so they can move the black druid by 3, but I could not play these two by themselves without a regular black druid. So they enhance druid cards of the same type. You may also choose to save your Viking cards until the end of the game, because when the game is over, the players get a chance to use the Viking cards to kind of finalize their amulets. At that point, you can discard a Viking card that you still have to trade an amulet from your play area with an amulet in the display up there. Or you can choose to discard two Viking cards to simply take an amulet, a piece of amulet from the display. And that's how the game works. You play your Druid cards, moving around and trying to get as many amulets as possible, to encounter the Vikings as few times as possible. At the end of the game, the player with the most amulets wins the game. And this is in essence how Celtica works. Now, why this game has received such bad comments? Maybe people were expecting something else. Maybe people were bothered by the fact that there is, yes, indeed, there is a considerable luck factor. The luck element is intense, especially when at the end, I mean, building an amulet takes a long time. You won't have scores of like, well, I built 7, she built 9. Sometimes everybody builds 1 and a player builds 2, or everybody builds 1.5 and the winner has 1 piece more than the non-winners. When it gets that close, then you really realize, wow, a single card, if I had drawn it, I wouldn't have stopped here, I wouldn't have lost these 2 pieces, and I would be the winner. Especially when the game is close, you may have the feeling that that Lady Luck really plays a huge role, which she does. It is a game that has a lot of luck. This being said, and usually, I don't know, usually I just feel that the exercise is pointless when there is so much luck, and yet somehow maybe these druids do have some magic or something. I found myself strangely entertained. I was really attracted to gameplay. I was really interested in gameplay. I was paying attention. Everybody was paying attention, including the young friends that I played it with. Something that, I mean, what are the things that I like about the design? The luck, yes, I don't like it all that much, but again, if you're playing it with casual players, with children, they expect that. They're not so, shall I say, so annoying as hobby gamers such as myself sometimes are. So, if you play with casual players, they will not mind that. Good things about the design. Was so simple, why so linear that you can play with children. It has some interesting decisions that you can make. Again, it's very simple, very basic, but enough to keep me interested. For example, there is the fact that you are trying, of course, to avoid the Viking spaces, and then I'm trying to figure out what other players may have in their hand. If I am in a bad situation, like I am here, and I have a single great card in my hand, that's not great, because if I play it, I'll get here and lose something. So maybe I'll try to actually spend resources and spend cards so that I can do that. So then I get another card. If I'm lucky, maybe I get a great card. Now I have 2, and hooray, I went through that ordeal. Or I simply delay as much as possible because I'm hoping that someone else will get there, lose their token, and at that point I play my single great card and I advance. So there is the idea of grabbing opportunities and delaying the unavoidable for as long as possible until sometimes the unavoidable turns out to be avoidable. A very interesting element to me is also the fact that the design has, surprisingly enough, a certain push your luck element. Yes, there is luck, but also, well, it's the fact that you can push it, that is, you can choose how much of it you want to take in certain circumstances, to me makes the game really interesting. Example, what do I mean? Suppose that we are here in this area here. Here. The next locations are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, ideally from here, if I have 2 red druids, I would want to do, well, this turn I play 1, I get 2 amulets. Next turn I play the other druid, and I get 3. Now, with 2 red cards, I get a total of 5. That's pretty good. But what happens if I did play a single 1? And I get those 2 amulets, thinking 3 are coming. I have another red druid in my hand, And another player, before the game goes back to me, plays 2 red druids. Oopsie doopsie poopsie. Now all of a sudden my red druid is gonna put me in here and make me lose 2 amulets. Push your luck in the sense that I may, in a situation such as this one, try to go to move a lot faster and closer there. This way, faster and closer, skipping some good things, faster and closer to negative areas, and especially emptying my hands. Now I don't care what happens to that guy until the next turn. So when I'm here, I could choose to take 3, and that's it, burning my 2 red cards, and I don't have to worry, those 3 are in the bank. Or take 2, hoping that I'm gonna get 3 more, total of 5, but knowing that there is a chance that I may end up, boom, losing 2. So at that point, the net is 0. Very simple idea. I mean, again, even my 7-year-old daughter really could see that, and that really plays into the strategy. Luck remains a huge factor in the game, but the fact that there are the choices such as these ones, to me, is enough to make the game interesting. Not to make it jump at the top of my mental rating, the best game ever, most sophisticated, more complicated, but for a game that I can play with my daughter, and in a year or 2 probably also with my other younger daughter, that I can play as a casual game, as a light game. You can kill a game in 20 minutes, 30 minutes when people know what they're doing. The rhythm is very snappy, the pace is very fast. I play 2 cards, I get a card, it's your turn. I play this when I take 2 amulets. Sometimes people will like to take their time looking at the amulets, but then some of the times it's obvious what they want to do. Another element actually is that there is more indirect interaction than I expected, because the amulets are public knowledge, and then I see that you need a purple piece to complete your amulet. Oh, and look, I just landed in an area that lets me take 3 pieces. Oopsie, gone. I'm taking them. So by taking pieces that you see obviously other players want, you can get in the way of what they're doing. There's more interaction, again, indirect, but very effective, very powerful than I would have ever expected. So, if you can stomach a quite considerable element of luck, Celtica has all of these little rewards, all of these little nice things that you can do that can keep you entertained, that give you interesting decisions. And overall, I'm happy. I'm definitely happy that I added it to my collection. Even if I don't play much in the future, I played a bunch of times now during this Thanksgiving break, and that already, made my expense, my investment worth it. If you can find a copy out there that is not too expensive, and probably the fact that not many people seem to like this game will help you with that, then I don't know, give it a try. I find it's a really fun game. It may not be an excellent game, but it's a good one. One last caveat: I would not probably play with more than 3 players. I did play it only with 2 and 3. I liked it this way. With 4 or 5, I think it may get too chaotic. Maybe then at that point, downtime will become a problem. I haven't played it that way, so I cannot say that definitely. But I also don't feel like playing with 4 or 5, so I'll present that idea to you as an hypothesis. Other than that, Celtica is a fun game that probably does not deserve the bad reputation that it has. Give it a try and, let me know what you think. Personally, I like it. Celtica.